Transforming your life with hypnotherapy just got easier with your host, Julie from CoachingHypnosis.net.
Welcome back, dear listener, to Coaching Hypnosis. We're on day 9 of our 30-day countdown, the world's darkest hypnosis cases. Today, we're sliding into the 1980s and 90s to look at a collective madness that didn't just ruin bank accounts, it dismantled families, clogged the judicial system and put entirely innocent people behind bars for crimes that literally never happened. Today, we decode the dark psychology of the Satanic Panic therapists. For nearly 2 decades, a bizarre contagion swept through Western society. The headlines were filled with terrifying stories of vast, underground satanic cults operating secret networks out of suburban daycare centres, breeding babies, and sacrifice tunnels hidden in tunnels under the local library. Now, if you look at the police records from that era, the FBI eventually concluded something startling. There was zero physical evidence, no bodies, no secret tunnels, no blood-soaked altars, nothing. So where did thousands of pages of incredibly detailed horrific testimonies come from? They were manufactured, not by the victims, but inside the offices of well-meaning licensed mental health professionals utilising unvetted hypnotic regression. Unlike the charismatic cult leaders we've unmasked so far, these therapists genuinely believed they were helping, but by using highly leading, aggressive hypnotic programming on vulnerable clients seeking answers for their anxiety, they accidentally became some of the most dangerous psychological puppet masters of the 20th century. Let's look at the actual clinical architecture of how a trusted therapist can accidentally program a human mind to build a monster. The catastrophe of the Satanic Panic was largely triggered by a single book published in 1980 called Michelle Remembers, co-written by a Canadian psychiatrist and his patient, whom he later married, because ethics were apparently entirely optional in the 1980s. The book claimed to recover long-buried memories of satanic ritual abuse through hours of deep hypnosis. Suddenly, therapists everywhere bought the hype. When a client walked into an office complaining of standard non-specific symptoms like depression, chronic fatigue, or generalized anxiety, the therapist wouldn't look at modern stressors. Instead, they would look at the client and suggest, "You are suppressing a memory, and it's probably a secret cult." To uncover this supposed hidden trauma, they would guide the client into a deep somnambulistic trance state. In hypnosis, we call this a hypersuggestible state of hyperapnesia. When a client is in this deeply relaxed, open state, their conscious gatekeeper is entirely asleep. They wait to please the therapist, and their imagination is running on absolute overdrive. If the therapist then begins asking highly leading, loaded questions like, "Do you see the candles? Is your father wearing a robe? What color is the altar?" The subconscious mind does what it does best. It fills in the blanks. Stage 1, leading diagnostic. Therapist suggests anxiety is a buried cult memory. Stage 2, deep somnambulistic trance. Conscious gatekeeper asleep. Imagination hyperactivated. Stage 3, subconscious confabulation. Mind weaves therapist leading prompts into permanent memory. In clinical terms, this is called confabulation. The brain taking bits of horror movies, nightmares, and the therapist's subtle hints and weaving them together into a brand new, vivid, and completely artificial memory fabric. Let's look at the absolute absurdity of this medical dark scam. These professionals convinced their clients that their anxiety wasn't caused by a stressful job or an unhealed childhood emotional dynamic, but because their suburban soccer mum was secretly a high priestess sacrificing goats on Tuesday nights. If you go to a doctor today with a headache and they put you in a trance until you remember that your skull is actually inhabited by a miniature alien colony, you'd sue them for malpractice before the elevator reached the lobby. But in the 1980s, people paid top dollar to sit on a couch and be hypnotically gaslit into believing their entire childhood was an episode of The X-Files. What makes the recovered memory error of a profound tragedy is that once a false memory is hypnotically imprinted, the human brain treats it as 100% concrete reality. The emotional pain felt by the client when recalling the fake cult was completely real, even if the cult itself was entirely imaginary. These unvetted practitioners trapped their clients in a state of manufactured terror using 3 clinical mechanisms. 1. The confabulation feedback loop. In a hypersuggestible trance, the client would make up a small detail to satisfy the therapist's question. The therapist would gasp, write it down, and validate it. The subconscious brain thinks, yep, I'm getting approval and solving the puzzle. So it makes up an even bigger detail next time, spiraling completely out of control. 2. The erasure of reality checks. Clients were told that if their family members denied the bizarre allegations, it was just proof that they were in on the conspiracy or in deep denial. This effectively sliced away the client's actual support systems, leaving them entirely dependent on the therapist's office to validate their reality. 3. The hypnotic affirmation of trauma. By forcing clients to repeatedly return to these artificial memories, the nervous system experienced massive, genuine PTSD symptoms. They literally traumatize their clients from scratch, programming them to live in a permanent, hypervigilant state of fear against a threat that never existed. This is the ultimate warning of the power of suggestion. It proves that hypnosis is a highly powered scalpel. In the hands of an untrained or deeply biased practitioner, it doesn't heal wounds. It creates entirely new ones, hollowing out a person's sanity and replacing their history with a nightmare. The enduring lesson of the Satanic Panic therapist is that your mind is deeply sensitive to the narrative it is fed. Real, ethical breakthrough work never requires you to invent elaborate, terrifying puzzles to justify your current emotional pain. A legitimate guide won't hunt for monsters in your subconscious. They will give you the tools to find peace, clarity, and safety right here in the present. You don't need a spectacular horror movie backstory to deserve healing. If you've been caught in a cycle of constantly trying to analyze, dissect, or dig up old, convoluted reasons for why you feel anxious or stuck today, it's time to step out of the psychological graveyard. You don't have to be fueled by endless historical trauma or manufactured crisis to build an extraordinary life and business. You will go much further when you're fueled by peace. If you're ready to put that invisible weight down, step out of the over-analysis trap and lead with a clear, stable, and completely sovereign mind. I invite you to book your free 40-minute clarity call. Together, we'll clear the mental clutter, calm your nervous system, and install a powerful, unshakable subconscious identity firmly rooted in your current real-world power. Remember, aligned subconscious plus healed history equals unshakable leadership. Thank you for listening. Align your mind. Visualize your future. Grow your business. Mindfully yours, Julie.